can you describe for us your spiritual upbringing?
My spiritual upbringing came basically from two sources. One was my mother's innate spirituality and the innate essence of her life, which was grounded in spirituality, which did not have a name or a structure, but just was part of her being. I was very close to my mother, and I would steal the books that she was reading, even as a little kid, and read them and hide them under the mattress. So nobody would know that I was interested in my mother's journey. I would find her poetry and memorize it. My mother was a seeker and a spiritual seeker, and before she came into the Catholic Church, she was Episcopal, and so we were raised initially Episcopal and went to the Episcopal Church. And the only thing I really remember about that is we got to wear little blue gowns and sing. And that was the best part about the Episcopal Church that I remember. And then I was in Hillside School, loving Hillside School, the freedom we had there. In the first grade, we were making little chairs. I mean, that wonderful liberal opportunity we had to enjoy first grade without a lot of structure. My father went to a Catholic boarding school back east, and he had met his best friend there, and he was back visiting his best friend decades later and saw the way that he was raising his 7 children, and came back and said to my mother, I would like to raise our children in my Catholic faith. My mother said, well, Neil, I just have come to that same conclusion.
It's convenient.
So it was very simple. I never felt there was a big change. We didn't all of a sudden kneel down and say the rosary or anything, We just began to go to St. Thomas More. And it was a very easy transition. The only difficult transition for me was leaving the Hillside School and getting on the Sandy Boulevard bus after going down Council Crest on a streetcar. And here I was in 2nd grade, and Alice was in 3rd grade, putting on a uniform, which was different, with white collars and cuffs and black serge and Lyle stockings. Can you imagine? Your 3rd grade. But somehow, when I got there, I felt comfortable. I liked the sisters. Mother Mary Magdalene was my 2nd grade teacher. They were warm, loving women, and I had friends there right away, made good friends. So I went through my entry into the Catholic tradition as far as the teaching of the church there, and I did not feel uncomfortable with it. I was a little bit of a rebel. I would get in trouble for talking too much or whatever it was, and not always bringing the catechism memorization that I was supposed to memorize. I think I was about in the 4th or 5th grade when we were supposed to memorize the definition of some failings that we might encounter in our life, and one of them was a presumption. And I can remember I can still say it by heart because I hadn't studied it and I couldn't say it, and I had to write it on the blackboard 50 times. Presumption is a rash expectation of salvation without making proper use of the necessary means to obtain it. I can see myself writing it. So then I passed on. I gave presumption a thought or two and then moved on. And at this time, I think this is when Mother began to realize that there were many different ways of experiencing the Catholic faith. And for her, she liked the monastic tradition. Instead of a lot of doing this or doing that, or not doing this or not doing that, to immerse herself in the early monastic way of sinking your roots into the heart of the Psalms in the Old Testament and New Testament, and not bother about doctrine and so forth. And whenever we would come back with a doctrine question, she would say, just go back to the source, Don't worry about doctrine, because doctrine is simply a way of trying to get a handle on the mystery of our lives, how we came into life, what our life is meant to be, how do we associate in our life with people who help us grow. So I've never been interested in doctrine at all. And when I had to teach high school, this is when I realized I didn't believe anything I was teaching, because the textbooks were full of trying to nail down the mystery of life into doctrinal statements, and they just were half-baked, coming out of a certain structure that didn't connect at all to life. So I grew up as a Catholic, but loving the church's ceremonies, loving the structure of Mass on Sunday. I loved the singing. I loved the fact that my grandfather would walk up this aisle holding my hand and put a nickel into my hand, and when it came time for the collection, I could put my nickel in it. That was Dadu. And he was, of course, born Catholic and raised Catholic, as my father was born and raised Catholic. But those were beautiful memories for me, going up to St. Thomas More Church on Sunday, walking in with my grandfather, his big warm hand, sitting in the front row. My grandfather would turn around and lead the singing. It was just a very beautiful way to start a week, start a Sunday. So Holy Child then became a comfortable enough experience for me, although I can remember feeling I should keep my mouth shut because I don't really believe that, but not making a big fuss out of it, not standing up and saying, I don't think that's right or something.
Did you ever open your mouth and make a fuss?
I don't think I did. I just kept my counsel. And then a friend and I decided we would make our little monastery. This is Judy Bailey. She lived around the corner down by the fountain there, Portland Heights. And we decided we were going to have our own little monastery. And there was a little wooded place out in the playground. And we would go in there and just be quiet, and the kids would be playing, and we would be playing, and then we'd say, it's time, let's go to our monastery.
How old are you at this point?
Maybe 10, maybe 10, 11, around in there. So I think I was always attracted, as my mother was, to a more contemplative, much more of an experiential grasp of what really is essential to my life spring, and not dealing so much with all the clutter of the details, let that flow.
Do you remember the books that you would take from her?
Oh yeah, the Dialogues of Catherine of Siena, Hymns to the Church by Gertrude von Lefort, very beautiful poetry expressing a yearning for understanding the church. I remember, Mother, I lay my head upon your hands, protect me from yourself. The laws that you make for me are too much. And then going in from there, I have it at home. I mean, every once in a while I dip into it. But it had a profound effect upon me. And I would keep that under my mattress too, because I didn't want Alice to see or anybody else to see.
What did you think they would say?
I didn't care. I just didn't want anybody to begin to ask me questions where I didn't have any answers. I just knew that when I read certain things that touched my soul deeply, there was no way of explaining them.
Mm-hmm.
So as my years grew, I felt a stronger and stronger attraction for wanting to know this mystery of God more deeply. I didn't talk about it. And then went off to boarding school because Alice was supposed to go for her junior and senior year. His mother had had this wonderful experience. And Alice, in her sophomore year, had this big rush of boyfriends, didn't want to go to boarding school. So I got the opportunity to go, and I was very excited because any new adventure for me is something that just is another way of opening up another door. Any new adventure, give me one, I'll take it. So I just had a wonderful opportunity there to experience finally the faith that I felt in a way that was consistent with the way these Dominican sisters were living. Very liberal, very open, very warm. And I began to see that if I wanted to follow this deepest inclination in my soul, I could live a life like this. And I really hadn't thought about it much. although a couple of times Judy Bailey and I in our little monastery would think about maybe if we were contemplative sisters, who had nothing to do but go to their little forest monasteries. So we kind of played with that idea. But I hadn't really thought otherwise, of a convent life. But it began to be something that I could tell with these sisters. They had found a way to live freely within a structure, and it's the only way that I could live would be to live without the sense of this is wrong, this is right, this is what you do, this is what you don't do. And because I had this sort of free spirit anyway, I would get in trouble in school. We had A cards, B cards, C cards, D cards, and I did get a couple of C's. If you got a D, you were expelled. I don't know, I just wouldn't show up for stuff, or we would be out hiking in the hills behind and not show up for something, and I had good friends there too. One of my friends that came as a sophomore as I came, and we came a couple of days early, and we bonded right away, and she's still my very, very best friend. We ended up rooming together junior, senior year, and then she went to London and married a BBC announcer there, but she would come home with me in the summer, and one of her daughters she named Susannah, another son she named Neil. So
what's her name?
Mary Brown.
Mary Brown.
She was Mary Henderson. And every summer she comes over from London, and we have a great visit and do camping, whatever it is we want to do together. So I had these good experiences. That the sisters were very supportive. There wasn't anyone who I felt was going to clamp down and demand anything of me that I couldn't give. And my friends were good, strong friends too, particularly 2 or 3 that just we bonded for life. And so it was at the end of my high school that I began to think, now what do I really want to do to pursue this growing sense of identification with a greater reality? And I felt, I could do this in the religious life. And I told my mom. In the meantime, I was living, normal life and had boyfriends and just enjoyed all the elements of social life as well as this other emerging life. And she said, well, I think it'd be better if you had a year of college first. So we looked at different colleges, and she said, why don't you pick something on the East Coast, because then you'll get experience there too. And so my aunt had known Manhattanville College, Addie Marge. And she said that's a very fine college. Madeline's of the Sacred Heart, very good educators. And Sudi would be on the East Coast where she can get, different exposure to the culture and opportunities there. So I applied and I was accepted. And my principal at Dominican wrote apparently a very nice recommendation for me. So they were expecting this innocent little lovely child from Oregon. They still thought that there were bows and arrows out there and wooden shutters, and so so they put me with a roommate who was very I guess she was psychologically below par, and I think they thought that I would be someone that could help her come out of her deficiencies and everything, but I just couldn't do it, because at night I would wake up and she'd be standing next to my bed looking down at me, like she wanted a friend really badly. I just wasn't up to it. So I got my room to myself. They gave me a room to myself, which was great. So during that year, I was supposed to have taken advantage of all the cultural opportunities, but I kept getting campused for misbehavior, smoking in the wrong place. I spent a lot of time in the bridge room playing bridge and learning to smoke.
So this school is in New York?
Oh yeah,
And
Manhattanville College, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it was on 133rd Convent Avenue, way up in that part of New York. And since then, they've moved out into Purchase, New York, out into the country. But it was a wonderful school, great education, and I had a lot of fun when I was on campus. You know.
What'd you do in New York City?
Well, in New York City itself, I didn't do so much, but I did a lot of going out with friends and just having fun.
Mm-hmm.
And went up to Stowe, Vermont, and went skiing, and had some fun times up there.
Mm-hmm.
But I was supposed to be getting culture, and I went down to the cloisters just to make my mother happy, and did a couple of museums. But I really, when I wasn't studying and I did well in my studies, but I didn't like biology because I didn't want to cut up any animals. So we were going to do frogs this one day, cut up frogs, and I didn't show up. And the mother said, well, you've overcut your class and you're going to have to take it again next year. I have to send you to Mother Weston, who was the dean of studies. So they sent me to Mother Weston. Mother Weston said, well, Sudie, you have to take biology, and since you've overcut, you'll have to take it again next year. And that's when I told her, Mother Weston, I won't be here next year. And in the meantime, Mother and Alice and I had determined we were going to take this trip, 6-week trip to Europe. And we were going to spend 2 weeks in France, 2 weeks in Italy, and 2 weeks in England, and just explore and she probably thought I'd never see anything again. And au contraire, I've traveled several times.
Mm-hmm.
But so then she said, well, you're going to be studying in Europe. And I said, no. I said, actually, Mother Weston, I'm going to be joining the Dominican Sisters in August. And she looked at me, and I was standing up, leaning against the door of the office. And she said, come in and sit down, And she proceeded to tell me that there's no way I would make it in the convent. She said, we've never had a freshman here with such a record of breaking rules as you. And I know you've probably broken them innocently enough, but you're very undisciplined. And, in convent life, you really have to, pay attention to the rules, and it's going to be hard for you. Why don't you wait maybe until you're graduated from college, and then... So when I did, make a long story short, I thanked her, went to Europe, came back, was late entering because Neil was getting married. So I got married, I was there at his wedding, and then went down and joined the convent. I was 3 weeks late and never quite caught up, but eventually made it. They held me over extra 6 months to make sure that I had assimilated enough to become someone who could live the life appropriately. And then Mother Weston wrote me and said, Dear Sudie, how happy I am that despite your unpromising months here at Manhattanville, you have persevered in the novitiate, no doubt without some strong support on the strong handling or something like that on the part of your novice mistress. In other words, you've made it, but I'm sure it wasn't easy for you and for...
Sort of a halfway congratulations.
It was. And it's true that I didn't tell her that they had held me over for 6 months. So I think what you're asking is, my essential spirit is basically liberal and free. And I look for whatever it is in life situation that is in consonant with what makes me who I am. And if something isn't, I just ignore it. And by ignoring it, I'm usually breaking rules. And when you break rules, you can suffer the consequences. But as I grew in my own personal life and religious life, I found I was able to express the freedom that I experienced in a way that was positive, so that people responded positively to it. And then, so I'm teaching high school now. I'm 23, going out teaching at St. Rose Academy in San Francisco. And I find that students are very responsive to the way I'm teaching religion. And they express that this was something that they had never heard before. I'm not sure what it was I was telling them, but we did a lot of gospel study. And I said, the only way you know the way Jesus lived is not from doctrine, it's studying the way he lived. There was nobody more open, to life and to people and to different situations, and breaking all the rules of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, which is why they killed him. The doctrine that the Heavenly Father had to demand, some kind of payment back, for the fact that, we had sinned, and therefore he had to send his son and all this stuff. That was St. Athanasius who dreamed that one up, and I never believed it. They killed Jesus because he lived a free, liberal life, totally opposed to any rules and restrictions that kept people from being fully human. There's nobody more fully human. And the way he accepted people and loved people and called them down from the tree and says, Zacchaeus, I'm going to eat at your house tonight. And he ate with publicans and sinners, and they said, how can he eat with publicans and sinners? So the Jesus that I knew was one I could relate to, and I could give that to the students I was teaching. So I went through high school teaching and made good friends among students. They still come and celebrate life with me. So I have wonderful friends in their 70s, 75s, their grandmothers, whom I taught back in 1953, So a lot of my life is just keeping in touch with with women and men, because later I taught boys too up at another school, who I have just connected with on basically just a human level. In 1969, I was teaching in Stockton, and I finally told the powers that be I could no longer teach religion unless I could get some update in theology, post-Vatican II theology, which did open the windows and doors a lot to spiritual life. And so I did go back to Chicago, and I was in the habit for like about a week. And they gave me the option of if you're studying in a place that where no one is wearing the habit, and feel free not to. And so after a week, I picked out a little gray jumper and a little red and white polka dot shirt. And felt very liberated.
Never liked the uniform.
No, it's not true. I loved it. I felt very at home in it, but it no longer fit the situation I was in, because I was out in Chicago, and I wanted to be not. There's a little nun walking down the street, The people I was studying with also, we would do things together. We would go to the games and go out and have coffee, and I wasn't going to do that. We had a beautiful habit, beautiful white habit.
Yeah.
I never minded the habit at all. It just wasn't appropriate anymore. And then when I came back, Mother George said to me, I understand you're not wearing the habit. And I said, that's right. I took the choice not to. And she said, are you being careful? And I said, well, yeah, I'm being careful. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, there's a lot of movement now for what they call the third way. And that's where, you're not married and you're not religious, but you're just sort of experimenting. And I said, well, I've got a lot of friends. I said, male friends and female friends. I said, and I'm not experimenting. I said, I'm just enjoying life, living my life. And I have good friends, So I said, don't worry. I said, I'm not going to leap the wall or anything. And I never wanted to leap the wall.
So the third way, so there's married women, religious women. The third way is women who are doing other things besides that?
The women who are, and men who are staying in religious life, but having some little sexual encounters also, just to kind of broaden their life experience.
Got it.
And that seems like today that's a lot of people.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, people are just leaving now. A a lot of people entered religious life way too young, and were kind of limited in their growing potential. And so they grew up kind of half grown, and then they become an adult, and they realize that, I need some life experience just to know who I am, and the convent isn't giving me that. So a lot of people left, the convent and got married and stayed close and friends, but just chose a different life. So
After you joined the convent, did you ever have a romance or a crush on anyone?
I never had a romance, but I had very close male friends. Never felt the need to jump over and try experimentation. Just warm relationships with Father Joe Cerventi particularly. And I had this little crisis of faith in my very first teaching when I went to St. Rose Academy to teach. And I was like 23. Then all of a sudden, a lot of the things that I thought I believed, I no longer believed. And Joe came over and we talked a lot, and he kind of opened the doors to support my liberation from structures that no longer made sense to me.
Give an example.
Well, for instance, the redemption, the idea of redemption, that God had to get payment back for the fact that He'd created man, and man had went in the garden, and man had sinned, and therefore an affront against a supreme being could only be remedied by the sacrifice of God's Son and all that. I just didn't believe it, and it was sort of essential to the Catholic tradition. There's creation, redemption, sanctification, and so he came over and he said, he said, that's Saint Athanasius. I said, there's nothing to do, but the church adopted Saint Athanasius, and it's been part of the Catholic Church teaching ever since. He said, you don't have to believe that. And I said, well, I don't believe it. He said, that's fine.
Wow, that's very freeing.
Yeah, it was very freeing. He would totally liberated me on every score. Wherever I had anything that didn't fit what I sensed just in my being, didn't make any sense. No kind of a God, would have that kind of a convoluted way of expectations. And so little by little, I think I just defined my own way of being in the convent, my own way of being in my own faith life. Just simplifying it, just peeling off things that no longer were consonant with what I felt good human life was.
Did you find that, do you find that most of the people in the convent do that same thing for
themselves? No, they don't. And I'm always shocking people. I have to be very careful because a lot of them just have bought the whole package, and yet they're sort of uncomfortable with it, and yet they bought it. And I don't want to say, but you don't really have to believe that,
I think that applies to people everywhere in all walks of life, whatever system they're in.
They buy the whole system.
They buy the whole system. And no system is adequate because we're not system people. We're creative. The whole concept of God as, creator, we're constantly being created. Life is constantly being created, It's never a closed book. So you have to open yourself to that creativity that comes through you, through your heart, your soul, your mind, and follow that lead. There's no book or doctrine that can limit your potential just to be a reflection in this human form of God's wonderful creativity,
How would you define God?
The source of all beauty, good, potential, ongoing openness to all that is able to be connected, interacted. The web, sort of, the God is the web of everything that is connected, and infusing into that web potential for greater connections, greater creativity. I think the source of all creativity, whether it's just the unfolding of the universe, the unfolding of individual lives, the unfolding of our lives, that to me is where God is present, not in any shut doors. There's no shut doors. You see.
Do you conceive of God as an omniscient being?
I don't even use those words. I can't even. Omniscient being just closes my brain.
I think it does for a lot of people. As I've been hearing you speak, I've been thinking about how if the way you see spirituality and religion was universal, how many more people would feel like they have a home in spirituality. Spirituality and doctrine is, for a lot of people, inseparable.
Yeah. Isn't that a pity? Mm-hmm. Isn't that a pity? I mean, the God of this creative universe, how would that same God want to put you in a box? Any kind of a box.
It's funny you should say that, because that's one of Peter's, childhood mantras, or you never want to be put in a box.
Childhood, I would say.
Or lifelong, yeah.
You were a what?
Well, mostly an adult mantra, actually.
Okay.
Just not,
but you were
wanting to be put in a box.
Oh, but you weren't just a child either, put in a box. I remember very well.
Yes.
but see, boxes are containment. Why would you contain the dynamic of the human spirit, any spirit, And so, like, any faith that has any connection with the spiritual world is to be explored and to be open to. I mean, the woman who lives with us now, who's joined our community, she's in her 40s, and she's studying, getting a doctorate in interfaith dialogue. So she's all her papers are interfaith. See, I mean, every faith is being in tune somehow with this reality in human life, in creative life, that there is something greater and bigger than we are, of which we are a part. Mm-hmm. And different ways of reaching it, different ways of opening yourselves to it. Meditation practice. I mean, being out in the natural world, just ways of being tuned in to the spirit. Spirit of God in the clear running water, blowing to greatness the trees on the hill. Spirit of God in the finger of morning, fill the earth, bring it to birth, and blow where you will. Blow, blow, blow till I be, breath of the Spirit blowing in me. Did we sing that as a family?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's the one. I mean, to me, that says it. Not much more needed than that.
Well, and you alluded to it there. I was going to ask if you were in charge of the curriculum of for an individual that's seeking to deepen their spirituality or get in touch with it for the first time. What would your curriculum look like? Maybe a book or an activity, or what would you recommend? Where should we start? Or where could we start? Because I'm sure there's lots of different ways to do it.
I would just wait to see where you tune in, I would study the different great faiths of the human journey on this planet, and find where you resonate. Where you resonate. If you resonate with meditation, if you resonate with the Sufi faith, the head of the religion department at San Domenico School, which is that school I went to and it moved out to a different name, is a Sufi. And he's in charge of the religion studies at our school, because he says every faith has to be given its full dignity, and different faiths are going to correspond to what is growing within individual people as far as making this touch, beyond your here and now with a wider spiritual dimension. that is embracing all of us in different ways. So you find out what brings you alive spiritually, and a practice of meditation, certainly the immersion in the natural world, it can be with it. I mean, it can be whatever it is that takes you out of the limitations. And I'm thinking more of spiritual limitations, because all of us have limitations in our lives. But spiritually, we need to be opened up, and we need to listen and see and hear, through poetry, through reading, through music. What is it that opens up within us that deeper space, and makes us capable of embracing the bigger world, the bigger world. I don't think there's any one way.
For a novice like me who has not read much of the Bible but who wants to, do you have any recommendations?
I would just start with the Gospel of Mark. I mean, because Mark is the most is the shortest, and the other Gospel writers use Mark as their source and then brought in other stuff. What you're looking for is the human dimension, because that's how the Gospels were initially written. But then the church in the early years of the churches of trying to get together and lay a few alternative interpretations. You see, if you just look at Jesus himself, now you know that there was nobody around with a notebook taking down, his words. So when they give a long talk about what Jesus is saying, like at the Last Supper or something, no one was taking notes. That's the church coming in later. You have to be very, very careful. But if you look at what Jesus did, if you look at what his actions were, see, this is why I like Mark, because he doesn't do a lot of palaver. He just and you look at the way this man lived, how he related to the world around him, how he related to nature, how he related to his friends, how he related to women. You see an incredible being, and that's where I take my pattern, of living is from the way Jesus lived. And there was a wonderful example of who's that guy in Congress who's a Kennedy. He's a redhead.
Mm-hmm.
Joe? Okay, Joe the Third or something?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he was, the Republicans were coming up with some way of trying to deal with the poverty and the problems of the country for people who were not able to sustain themselves, and they were saying, we can't just throw money away on people like this. They have to learn how to get up and go and get themselves. And he had Joe ask for time for a response, and he said, "Well, I'm not sure what Bible you read. These are supposed to be all God-fearing people. Mm-hmm. But the one I read says, I was hungry and you gave me to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me to drink. I was naked and you covered me, And he said, that's the gospel I'm familiar with. I don't hear any of you referring to as a Christian country, or as you say that you come out of a spiritual or at least religious mm-hmm. context. I don't hear that here in this Congress, So I heard him say it, and he was just fantastic. And he stood up and just gave this impassioned plea for, if we call ourselves a Christian nation, let's take a look and see how Jesus lived and how he expressed what it is to be a human being mm-hmm. in this world.
It'd be interesting and compelling, I think, to see more spirituality in the Democratic Party championing for just what you're describing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although we shouldn't be calling ourselves a Christian country.
Yeah. Well, at least a country that
was founded on Christian values.
Right.
And a lot of, I guess maybe there's a lot of religion wrapped up in politics, whether it's sanctified or not. Is maybe what she's saying.
Yes. I'm just, of course,
there's technically a separation of church and state, but if you're going to bring church into it, you might as well
Bring multiple churches.
churches
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah, that's very true.
Do you have a favorite story from the Bible?
Oh gosh, I got so many. But one of my very favorites is the one I just mentioned, where Jesus is coming into town and they've heard about him because he's been living in a small little town up in northern Galilee, and he's coming down into Jerusalem, coming close for one of the big feasts. And the people have heard about him because he's already been responsive to people's needs and have a healing touch. So there's a big crowd as he's coming in with his friends, and Zacchaeus, who was apparently a short little guy, wanted to see Jesus. This is the way Mark describes it. And so he climbed a big sycamore tree so he could see Jesus. And as Jesus came in, he looks up in the sycamore tree and he says, Zacchaeus. Oh, and he was a publican. They were the people who took the taxes, and the Jews thought they were just the worst because they worked for the Romans. Zacchaeus, come down, because I'm going to stay at your house tonight. So Zacchaeus came down and welcomed Jesus into his house, and there was a whole crowd of other publicans and sinners and old people that the Jews just thought were totally off the pale. God couldn't have anything to do with this riffraff. And that was the beginning of Jesus's reputation as being a wine bibber and a glutton, that he loved to eat and drink, and he loved to do it with other people. So I just see right away the humanity of Jesus so different than the way that we're instructed to say this is either the good and gentle Jesus, and he wasn't, because he could tell off the publicans and sinners, you vipers, you hypocrites, and you get a lot of his calling a spade a spade, but his reputation is coming down, as this very, very holy, sanctimonious, Yes, he did gather children together. I love those when they were trying to say, well, who's the greatest among us, and I'm better than you, and you're better than I am, and then he just had to put this child around and brought him under his lap and said to him, unless you can become as simple and able to accept life as this child, you'll never make it. And his teaching about the kingdom of God is key to the scripture, because we always think of the kingdom of God as something either at the end that we're going to enter into or something that we're going to build. Mm-hmm. Jesus never talks about the kingdom of God as something you build, because he says the kingdom of God is here and now. It is in the midst of you. The kingdom of God is in the midst of you. It's not something you build. It's not something you wait for, Mm-hmm. And that, to me, I wrote my dissertation on that when I went to got my master's back in, because it was a revelation to me that we think we're going to build the church. We're going to build the kingdom of God on earth. We're not building anything.
Mm-hmm. It's very Zen.
Yeah. So, but take a look at Mark. I would start with Mark. I don't like the Gospel of John, even though it's beautiful, but it was written so late. You already see the interpretation of the early church getting into it. So the earlier the gospel is, the less contaminated it is.
How would you describe your mother to someone's never met her?
Oh my God. Such a free spirit. Warm, loving, vital, engaging, trustful. She would watch my father enjoy beautiful women and be delighted. I can remember her watching, because my father loved women. Mm-hmm. And my father would be talking to a group of women and be very much engaged. And I can watch my mother just looking at him with this love and deep appreciation. She had no limits to her capacity for love and trust. See, that was just wonderful humor, deeply literate, wrote wonderful poetry herself. Um, she raised us to be I'm trying to think, like I would get spanked because I was the naughtiest of the children. Well, my brothers weren't such angels either, but I would lock myself in the bathroom because I'd done something my mother didn't think was appropriate, and she would say, "Come out, Sudi." I said, "I'm not coming out." There was a little balcony outside this bathroom, and I would go open the window and go out and sit in the balcony. It was something over the front door, you know how you have a little something, and she would say, "Well, your father will be home soon," and I would think, "Uh-oh," because my dad would come to the door and say, "Sudi, open the door," and I'd open the door. See. So my mother and I had certain tensions there because I was not an obedient child. But deep love between us always was there. And she wrote me when I was in the convent early on. She wrote me every single day. I have boxes and boxes of her letters.
Wow.
And wonderful letters, just describing everything that was going on in her life, in the family life, and responsive to my life. She was just a beautiful woman, and she had seen a lot of sadness in her life because her father had killed himself. He had moved from Dayton, Ohio, back into Portland and started a kind of like a Jansen Beach type of thing. Mm-hmm. And a child was killed, falling off of one of the rides, and he just was so devastated by it. And he was sitting in his office, and there was a lot more to it than I'm saying that I don't even know. And he shot himself. And then her very close sister. Trying to think her very closest sister, Auntie Mary Louise, was just a year and a half younger than Mother, because they had grown up in Dayton, Ohio, in a big family, and Mother was the oldest girl, and this Anna Louise was, I think, just 2 years younger, and she was an amazing horsewoman, the most beautiful of that family. I've seen pictures of her, and she fell in love. She was living in San Francisco, working in San Francisco, and fell in love with a married man. And the married man wouldn't leave his wife for her, but she was a passionate lover, and she killed herself. So Mother is not an illusion, not a dream, this lurking silent shock, but like the sudden gleam of dark, wet rock beneath a flowing stream. Not an illusion, not a dream, this lurking silent shock, but like the sudden gleam of dark, wet rock beneath a flowing stream.
Is that one of her poems?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Just that after Auntie Weezy died. So Mother had deep soul, and great friendships, both men and women. She was the most remarkable person in my life, and remains so, really, to her poetry.
What was it? What was your experience as she got older and got Alzheimer's? And
well, the thing was that she remained loving, responsive. When I would visit her, she wasn't sure whether I was her daughter or her sister. And I would say, "Marry, it's me, it's Sudi." She said, "Oh, Sudi." She said, I wasn't sure whether it was you or Weezy.
Oh.
And then I would, the first language that she was really close to growing up was French. So if I would sing to her in French or speak to her in French, it would bring back her whole childhood. And and she would just respond. I remember when she was there in her hospital bed, just to see her light up, because it brought back to her, if I spoke in French, all the growing up that she had had in the beautiful family life that she had had as a child. So we stayed always close. There was no time in which I visited her and she didn't respond, to me as with love.
What was your relationship like with your father?
Adored my father. After dinner at night, we had a big couch. I can see it's a rose-colored couch in the living room. And my dad would lie down on the couch and we would turn on classical music, and I would come and lie down beside him. And I can feel his warmth. He was a warm man, and he didn't palaver. He didn't go on, try to explain anything except that you knew he was totally there for you. Mm-hmm. And I can still feel that warmth and security and delight that we had in each other. I was his youngest, and I think it was very hard for him when I went into the convent. And Mother had to break it to him, that I was going to do this. I couldn't tell him myself, but I think he would like to have seen me around, and, with children. I remember Uncle Tom was very upset. That was his brother. Because I went to the convent, because he said, I was very close to him too, and he said, I just wanted to see a whole bunch of little Sooties.
And how did you feel getting that feedback then? Did you feel, what was your reaction? I mean, hearing kind of, it feels like the way that life could go seemed very straightforward at that time. Having a family was the right way.
I just said, I'm sorry, Dad. I'm doing the best I can.
Was it a clear decision to you, or did you struggle?
No struggle.
It was clear. Mm-hmm. You knew what you wanted.
And Mother used to say, Mother would wrestle with ideas. She was a real deep thinker, and she assumed I was wrestling with this idea. I said, I'm not wrestling, Mother. It's just very clear to me. So, they finally accepted. Mm-hmm. And then they saw that my growth and development was really wonderful and healthy. So I think they grew to, Mother, I think, was supportive all along. And Dad became supportive.
Over time.
It didn't take time. He never downplayed it to me. I just think he was hurt.
In a more modern era, or setup where you could have potentially had both worlds, where you were in a spiritual community and also potentially, say, decided to have kids, would that have interested you or not?
Yeah, maybe. Mm-hmm. Maybe I would love to have had kids. But the choice wasn't one I had to struggle with. Mm-hmm. I had to make this is it. My whole life saying, here it is. And I'm going to live it out in this way with these people. And I never felt I made a mistake. I've had wonderful relationships with my family and with all the kids,
Yes.
and still feel that way. So I think, and if there were, come back and have your life over again, I don't know. Maybe if I had fallen deeply in love with some of the boys that I knew, and the men later on, but never, always been attracted to men, but never felt I wanted to live my whole life that way. I don't have any negative sense of married life or sexual life or anything. You just follow your gut, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Did you mentioned you did have some dating romantic experiences in high school?
Oh, yeah.
Can you share any stories or describe any of those guys?
Yeah, I remember when I was a freshman, and we were, the boys had gone off to war, the men had gone off to war, so we had to do more helping out and things like picking strawberries and that kind of stuff.
What year is this?
This would have been, see, if I was born in 1930, this would have been like 43, 44. And I remember a bunch of us went out to the strawberry fields and were doing the picking the strawberry. And this cute boy was picking strawberries next to me. And then he started picking strawberries closer to me. And then he decided he would carry my strawberries back to the Pat Daly. God, he was so cute. A darling boy with, curly black hair. And so we became good friends, and we'd pick strawberries together. And I would see him off and on also growing up. Mm-hmm. We went to dancing school. He wasn't a part of dancing school, but a lot of the boys that I grew up with, Bobby Cronin and, that whole crowd, were boys that were part of my life. So, and I would, go to dances with them, and it was more just fun time with boys. I never had a big, romance, as a sense of, should I, do this with my life or not? I just enjoyed people. Mm-hmm. And if they were boys, I enjoyed them because they were boys, and it was a little different. And it was fun. And then we would play Spin the Bottle, a whole bunch of us boys and girls together, up in Portland Heights, Jimmy Heitkemper and Rusty Ferguson and those boys. And you would play Spin the Bottle, and then when the bottle ended, facing you, did you play it when you were growing up?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and then you go off.
It's still popular, I think.
Is it? Yeah. Is it? I thought maybe it was just our era. So I loved to Spin the Bottle. I mean, then you go off into I think it was a little coat closet or something. It's a bottle, and you practice kissing.
Yeah, everyone has those memories.
Do you have those memories? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember your first kiss?
Pardon?
Do you remember your first kiss?
I don't think so. I think it was with Jimmy Heitkemper after I Spin the Bottle. But it was just, a rough attempt.
Most first kisses are. Yeah. But along this time, I mean, you have siblings that are also growing up with you, and they have different kind of romantic experiences, and you commented on Alice's. So what was that like, growing up with your siblings? What was your dynamic with them?
Oh, they loved me. My brothers were just darling with me. I was the youngest. They were so sweet. They taught me all kinds of stuff. They taught me how to box. Mm-hmm. Up in the third floor, we had, toys and fun, and they had their boxing gloves. So my brothers would say, "So teach you how to box." Mm-hmm. And so I put on my boxing gloves. Then we'd go back. Then Neil would put his hand on my head, like this. And I would be going like this. I couldn't reach him. I just still remember that.
He was holding you at arm's length.
At arm's length. This flurry of little... No, and then the boys were always so sweet to Alice and me. We never had any, sibling clashes. Alice and I were very, very different, but very close. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, she... right away with Sally Powell next door. They were, dressing up and standing in front of the mirror. And Evie Powell and I would be laughing at her saying, well, who do you think you are, Miss Glamour Pussy? Or something.
Because you were would you say you were more of a tomboy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So you wanted to be outside and...
I'm climbing trees outside. Mm-hmm. But a year and a half younger. So, Alice was kind of precociously social, mm-hmm. and the boys were climbing up outside her window.
Because Because she was more into boys, or more into chasing boys.
Oh, that, yeah. Yeah. And boys were more my friends than my romantic interests. You know. But Alice was she had this Ouija board, and she and Sally Powell would be there in her room, in her bedroom with the Ouija board, and Eppie and I would be listening, and she would say, "Does Fred love me?" You know, and then the Ouija board would say, "Go yes or no," and she was really into that, and we were laughing and thinking that how could a Ouija board tell you your future? But then Alice and I became very close. You know, we were very different growing up. As soon as we became, that summer that after my freshman year of college, and that we traveled together with Mother for that 6 weeks.
In Europe.
Yeah, Europe. That really just cemented our relationship as friends, sisters and friends. We just laughed and had a wonderful time.
How would you compare, you see the same upbringing, your siblings' sense of spirituality to yours? What was similar and what was different?
The boys never really took with them. They were at that age when we became Catholic. It couldn't have been a worse age to have nuns tell you what's a sin. And Neil, I think, for a while, when he was married, you know, he was a churchgoer and a deacon, and you know, but I think he eventually found different ways to experience the spiritual in his life, and ended up with, you know, being Buddhist, really. And Stoddy was always a rebel, but he was closest to my mother. He was the most like my mother. His poetry, his depth, his charm. I think I told you once what he called his car. Did I tell you this story? When he was a teenager, he called his car the Mayflower because so many Puritans came across in it.
Wow. Doesn't sound very Catholic.
No. He was the closest to his body of all of us. I mean, he was just beautiful to behold, and the girls just were crazy about him. Everybody was. He was very gifted, and he lived sensate life at the same time of living a very powerful intellectual life. He was, you know, an English professor, and he could tell you anything about any quote, any source of literature that had inspired him, and was a wonderful teacher. But he always had that streak, you know, of wildness. And when once a truant officer, not a truant officer, but I guess a guy who was watching kids who were acting out up in the woods, brought him back to my mom and dad and said, you have to take care of this kid. He's going to be a juvenile delinquent, you know, unless you rein him in. So he had that streak of just pure animal instinct, you know, and he loved life, and life loved him. And we were very. I was very close to both my brothers. They were very dear with me. Stoddy's the one who, when I didn't pass in the convent the first time around, you go on to the next step, and I didn't pass because I said I lacked religious decorum, and so my family called to see how I was doing. And I told them, I said, well, I didn't pass that step, but I get to be here for another year, and I loved where I was up in Santa Sabina, and I didn't really have any problems with it. But Stoddy's the one who said to my parents, there's something wrong with Sudi, and I think we need to go down and see her. She's talking okay, but I think she needs us. And that was Stoddy, you know. And I didn't even know myself that I was feeling anything except, well, ho-hum, so what? I get another 6 months here and I like it here, and, you know.
Yeah. Very tuned in.
Pardon?
He was very tuned in with you.
Very tuned in, very tuned in. And both brothers were sweet to me, always, never anything but just protective and loving.
How did you find out? Where were you when you found out that Stoddy died?
One of my uncles called, and I'm trying to think. Who was it? Uncle Johnny? No, that was the dad. My Uncle Johnny called to say when my father had died. So I'm trying to think who it was who called. Can't remember. But just a huge impact of loss and grief, and I just couldn't deal with how it could have happened. And then the whole question of whether it was a question of drinking, because he'd given up drinking, you know, and was part of AA, he and Neil both. But perhaps there had been a lapse, you know, we never really knew. So I just grieved for his family, for Dee Dee and the boys, for my mother, and just the loss that I felt for myself, you know, of him in my life. His wonderful letters, which I still have, and he was a huge support for me. And he had given me the best that he had to give, and I treasure it, you know, always treasure it. Wonderful humor, wonderful tenderness, and a little bit of a wild side to him, you know, which I could identify with.
Yeah.
What do you miss the most about Alice?
Oh my God, just my best friend. Gosh, nobody knows me the way Alice knew me. Nobody had so much fun together as I had with her. We just understood each other so perfectly. So I've had a lot of friends, but nothing like Alice. Huge loss for me, huge loss. Every once in a while I just feel I want her, you know.
What would you say to her if you could, you know, if you could talk to her today? What would you say to her? What would you most want to say?
Alice, you're here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the hardest part of your relationship with Alice?
Oh, just simply growing up, we were so different. We were like two different people within the family. And so it would be hard if she made fun of me or if I was making fun of her. So I think just growing up before we became adolescent, when we were both adolescent, it was much easier. But when she was going through, you know, the boys climbing up her window and so forth, and I was making fun of her and so forth, and then we thought it'd be fun to share a room together, and so we did share a room, and that didn't work out very well because then we made a mark between. Alice was kind of messy at that time, and I wasn't, and so we would make a line between our beds and the floor, and anything of Alice's had to be on her side, and everything on mine on my side. So I would throw back over, you know, stuff.
All her mess.
All her mess. So maybe those are the hardest times, but mostly we just had really good relationship. Yeah.
And what did your relationship look like when you were adults? Did you write letters? Did you talk on the phone? How often did you see each
Not
other?
that much. We really didn't. We would talk on the phone once in a while, but not much. I was just there a lot. I came up, you know, 2 or 3 times a year, and I was just part of her life. She came down to visit. Always came down for my birthday. You know, spent a week. Would come down for a retreat. Spend another week. I just always felt in touch with her, even though we weren't, you know, writing or calling. We were in tune.
Yeah.
Yeah, in tune.
And did you find it harder to be in tune when she was in the depths of having all these little kids and family life? Or how did you manage when your lives looked very different?
I loved it. the more kids she had, the better I liked it. And then she would come down with the kids, and we would spend time by this river. I remember a wonderful picture, holding Court. He still remembers, he has it up on his wall. I'm holding him in this wonderful river space where we had one of our sisters had a little house up there from her family, and we stayed there. Alice and Peter, no, not Peter, Alice and the two top oldest boys came down. So I saw them every summer. I grew up as they grew up, sort of, and knowing their lives and feeling that they were part of my life very deeply.
What was your first impression of Peter?
Oh, I took Peter to my senior ball.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I never knew that.
I didn't
As
know
a high
that
school.
either.
Sure. He was part of the gang that hung around the house, because basically, courting Alice. And I was always friendly with him, and I liked him, and so when I had to choose somebody to invite to my senior ball at Dominican, he was a freshman at Stanford, and I was a senior. So I called him and said, "Peter, what are you doing on this May the 31st?" I said, "How would you like to come to my senior ball?" We had a wonderful time.
Uh-huh.
I loved him. I just loved him. We were very close.
This is before he was seeing Alice, but he was courting her.
Oh, he was always courting Alice from the kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
The kindergarten pictures, where he's looking down at her at Hillside School. He had her always in mind. So I was the little sister, but we were always chums.
Yeah.
And then as we grew into adulthood, and we really became close. As my as his wife's sister, and also an old friend. So I love Peter so much.
How would you describe him to someone who's never met him?
Just a man of such deep ethical centeredness and humor and humanity and evenness of capacity to evaluate all situations and never get over exercised. He always kept the calm of the house. If Alice got off in a tirade, Peter just would wait until she would, calm down, and he always kept the hand on the tiller, and she recognized that. I think she dedicates her journal to him under that capacity of being the one who held the course, because Alice would be exploring, different things, and Peter would always, say, keep steady, keep steady. I think they had a wonderful relationship, but it had its, ups and downs. But he kept Alice on the course. Did you notice that yourself?
Yeah, very steady person who I feel like as grandchildren sometimes was a little scary. He would look at you from across the table with kind of intense eyes if you had your elbows on the table.
Oh, really? Oh, that was it.
He actually mellowed out over time as he realized he had 18 grandkids. There was only so much he could do.
The funny stories of Alice and Peter grow up with their children, and what each felt was important. And at dinner table, each of the children would get a chance, to talk about what had happened in school that day, and what new ideas they had, and enter into conversation that was really enlightening and really listening to the children. And Peter would look across and talk about the elbows on the table, and Alice would say, "Peter, this is a time when something is more important." You know, it's more important that we can just share these boys' experiences and let them just be as free and open as they need to be. And let's let the elbows on the table go at dinner.
Yeah. So they balance each other out.
Very much.
You mentioned some of the challenges they had in their marriage. From your perspective, what did that look like?
Of Alice and Peter's?
Yeah.
And just Alice headstrong. Peter very measured, and very early on, you know, it was, when he came down, Alice came down the stairs one morning. Peter had gone off to work, and there was a big pile of clothes in a clothes bin at the foot of the stairs, and a note from Peter saying, "I deem it necessary that these clothes get laundered, you know, before I come home," or something like that. And also, I deem it necessary that the stove, the stove needs cleaning. Alice just knocked the clothes out. So it was a German in him, see? I mean, you don't, if clothes haven't been ironed after a day, that's not right, you know, I mean. And for Alice, other things were more important. She would get to the ironing of the clothes, but maybe not today.
Do you think Alice, in a different era where, you know, like living now, where there's so many opportunities for women, do you think she would have chosen to be a stay-at-home mother? Or I guess what path do you think she might have taken or chosen career-wise that might not have been available to her?
She was offered the career of being bishop. Who was that incredible bishop who was so prominent back in New York? Bishop Fulton Sheen, and he was sort of the voice of American Catholic glamorous creature, and was able to promulgate Catholicism in a very positive way. And when Alice was finished college, and she was back in New York, she went to into Pennsylvania to Holy Child there. What was the name of the college? I forget. But then she went to New York to a finishing school as far as learning then how to, you know, be a businesswoman. Because my father said, you know, it's fine you have a degree in English literature, but that's not going to help, you know, if you're on your own sometime. So she went to Katie Gibbs. That was it, Katie Gibbs in New York. And in the meantime, Fulton Sheen wanted a full-time secretary and traveling companion, you know, who could help him with his many lectures and interactions with people across the country. So he wrote those nuns at Rosemont College, and he knew them well, and he said, "Is there anybody you would recommend, you know, to that I could interview?" And they said, "We know just the person. Her name's Alice Malarkey, and she's just finished. She graduated here last year, and she's just finished a year." Katie Gibbs, and she has everything you're looking for. So Alice went and had the interview, and he wanted her. But at the same time, Peter wanted her.
Wanted to get married.
Yeah, wanted to get married. Or just wanted her close. And if she had been out here, they wanted to continue their relationship. And so she gave up Bishop Fulton Sheen for Peter, and then, you know, came back, and then within a couple of years they had made the decision. Might have been a year, I don't know. No.
Was that a hard decision for her to choose between those two things?
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. Because she was in love with Peter. It was just a question of timing. But Alice then gained all that capacity of, she could have done anything, you know, because she had the background in her college years, and then added the capacity to be a really businesswoman, and she did a lot, you know, with those skills, opening up so many different ways of dealing with the underserved, and working with the Blessed Martin League, and, you know, helping Mother establish that program. So she was, I forget what that question was, but
Oh, I was just curious what your and you answered it
Okay.
beautifully. Just in a modern era where there are more opportunities available for women as careers than maybe nurse or teacher or secretary. Whether Alice might have pursued any of those
yeah, that
things.
was the question. Oh,
Yeah.
she could have done anything. Yeah. Sure. And she always used her skills that she had gained there in productive ways. And she loaned her skills and her time to many worthwhile projects, things that Mother had started and that she continued.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Earlier, you were talking about how your mother didn't think you'd have the chance to travel once you joined your community, and so that's why you went to Europe.
Oh yeah,
but you've traveled
a lot
since then.
Yeah, I've had a couple of trips in Europe, and some with Sister Peter Damien, who, after I'd finished my teaching career, and then I got elected into administration, and Sister Peter Damien was the head gal, and I was number 2, and so we traveled a lot to meetings across the country and in Europe, and then when she retired, they gave her. She was also head of one of our hospitals, and the doctors gave her a trip anywhere, and so she chose to go back to Europe and places that she wanted to see, and she chose me as her companion. So I've been 2 or 3 times, in one capacity or another. Back to England, back in Ireland, and on the continent. Never in exotic places, but mostly places with cultural ties.
Mm-hmm.
Switching gears, I want to talk a little bit about your community. What would you say are the biggest challenges that are facing your community right now?
Oh wow, huge challenges. We were a community that was founded as an educational community. We were founded in 1850 by the first Bishop of California. Brought this woman over from France to help start a school, and in California. And our first school was down in Monterey, and then one after another moved up to Benicia, from there to San Francisco, opening schools. So we had schools, and then eventually hospitals, and we had the number of sisters to take care of those responsibilities. We had like 360.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of young women were entering religious life at that time, like out of high school or out of college. When I entered, there were 16 of us, and half of them were out of college, and half of them were my age, maybe had had a year of college or just out of high school. So there was this wonderful group of women who were ready to move into any one of our schools at whatever level was appropriate. For instance, I had minored in Latin, so majored in French, and needed Latin teachers. So there was no problem with, and little by little, less those sisters aged, less sisters were entering, and we had to withdraw from one school after another. So now we only have our San Domenico School, which is the one I graduated from, which is a boarding school, and very much committed to, this is an interesting story here, committed to the Dominican heritage more than the Catholic heritage. Like the director of our religious program is a Sufi,
Mm-hmm.
And we had to make a decision as a congregation, as a group of sisters, we're like, 70 or 80 of us now, whether we were going to stay under the San Francisco Archdiocese and be subject to doing the appropriate thing as a Catholic school. So the appropriate things at Catholic school would be you would have a Catholic running the religious studies program, and your text would be sufficiently in line with the Archdiocesan religious content. So it was a big decision to make, because our schools had always been Catholic, but we had to make the decision that we would be a private school, and we would be under the Dominican Sisters of San Rafael, not under the Archdiocese of San Francisco. So we're no longer considered a Catholic school. That was big.
And how do you make decisions, important decisions like that as a group?
Well, we elect all our leadership. Just everything is done by election. And when we come together once every 5 years in a general chapter, which is what I'm going home to, because it starts right after I come home, we make decisions as a whole. And then we elect the leadership to carry out the decisions we've made. So this will be an interesting time because our numbers now are probably 80, I don't know. And median age is probably also about 80, median age, because we have the younger members, but we also have people in their hundreds.
Wow.
Yeah. We kind of go on, you know.
You're doing something
so
right.
we have to face how do we want to use the resources that we have to the most effective way of carrying out our mission, which is to address the critical issues of our time with depth and compassion, you know, based upon our commitment to the gospel. Mm-hmm. So to bring the gospel to bear, you know, on the critical issues. So we have to we have good financial resources because of very strong investments that have been made earlier on, you know, when the congregation was thriving. So we don't have any problems there taking care of our older sisters and of our properties and so forth. But we have a lot of capacity to do other things besides and are already doing them. We support lots of other programs that are effective in the world community and in our neighborhood communities. But it's the personnel. Like, for instance, take a person like myself. How can we best use people who are still capable of addressing in our own communities, local civic communities, the greatest needs?
What do you see as...
The greatest needs, homelessness, no
Yeah.
question about it. And the food distribution. We're already doing a lot of that. We just need to be able to focus and channel the resources that we have to where we feel are the greatest needs. You know, and we'll take a look again, both in our own local communities and in our world community. There's a big emphasis upon the environment, mm-hmm. you know, taking care of our planet and how we can best do that. We've had a committee way back on the commitment to the Earth Charter, mm-hmm. and we've redefined our commitment to the Earth Charter in its many different ways, both locally and universally, of protecting our planet and the people and all life forms within it. So how we can use our resources for the good of the planet and for the good of the human communities within our planet, and with the limited resources and energies that we have. So that's going to be our agenda.
Why do you think you have had a difficult time attracting lots of new young members?
Well, because new young members have so many more options now. Mm-hmm. You can take a young person who wants to make a gift of her life, and she can join the Peace Corps, she can join the Jesuit Volunteers. It used to be, you know, you either got married or you became a life of single blessedness, you know, or you joined some kind of a community. And there's many more communities people can join now, you know, that do both. You know, they have a family life and they also have a life of commitment to some, you know, value that we're espousing as well. Yeah. And also, I think disillusionment with the church. Mm-hmm. So instead of coming out of a Catholic family that has been very engaged with the church, and it's just kind of a normal progress to take this offer that the church gives. People, they're nuns, they say N-O-N-E-S, you know, the nuns, mm-hmm. who have no food. And the N-O-N-E-S are beginning to actually find that the nuns, N-U-N-U-S, are closer to them in the way of thinking and the way of acting than people within the church. Mm-hmm. So you have a lot of people just coming by and being interested in what we're doing and want to supporting us. We call them the Friends of the Sisters, and we have gatherings. We have opportunities for them to come together. And we have one sister who's just dealing with that group and finding lots of interest in young women and some men who simply want to support us in what we're doing, whatever it is.
What's a day or a couple, an average day of your life look like right now?
Right now?
Yeah, at age, what's your age? 80?
89.
89?
Well, I wander around at night because I don't sleep too well. But I set my alarm for 6:30, whatever that means. And then a lot of times between like 3:30 and 6:30, I can get a lot of things done. I'm very wide awake. And I can go into the sacristy, and I'm in charge of the flowers. And I can take away the dead flowers, and I can freshen flowers, and I can arrange the chairs in a way that I like. And I just can get things the way I like them. And if there's dead flowers anywhere, I take them out, I feed them to the deer. I come back up into my room and maybe write a couple of letters. I check my email. And then I go down for morning prayer at 7. After morning prayer, if it's a Wednesday or a Friday, I'm cooking breakfast. And it's nice because on Wednesdays we have people who come and join us for Mass. We have Mass in the house Wednesday and Thursday in our little chapel. And we have some neighbors and people who come in and for Mass, and I invite them in, for breakfast. So we have that nice opportunity. And sometimes the priest, too, will hold open invitation for him to come and join us. And then he's just one of the gang, he doesn't have any place of prominence. So we're trying to train them also.
Get down on our level.
We have a nice pastor. But there's one priest down there who's kind of conflicted. We're trying to loosen him up a little bit. And then that's like about 8 o'clock or so. We're finished there, and then I go back up to my room, and I clean up my room, make my bed, water my plants, and decide what the day brings. Every day is something different. I see a lot of people. I go out to San Domenico at least once a week and help with the archives out there because I can identify so many places and people and things that they don't know.
Uh-huh.
I have a very good relationship with the women up in the offices, and I just help them out in any way I can. I maybe do that once a week. And then there's always something that I'm engaged in doing, and sometimes it's helping out at the St. Vincent de Paul dining room. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just going to see a sick friend, going to see a former student who's not well. It's always something every day that engages my energies in a positive way. It's going over to our infirmary, to Lourdes, and visiting our sisters over there, helping one of the sisters who's very creative but who's had a stroke, doing some of getting back her stroke strength, mm-hmm. and also helping her with her art projects because she can no longer do some of them and I can help her do them. So it's just that type of a day. And then we have evening prayer again at 5 o'clock, dinner, watch the news. After dinner, come to my room, do some reading, and probably turn out my light and give it a try about 10 o'clock.
You say give it a try because you don't sleep very well.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, give it a try.
Yeah.
How do you pray?
I just don't pray with words. I just pray with my heart and soul. Just stay open. I just ask God to keep me open, to be responsive to whatever comes into my life, So I love to pray in common with the sisters and use the prayers that are there, but by myself, I don't pray with a lot of words. Mm-hmm. I just try to stay, I guess open.
You're 89. What's the best part about getting older and aging?
What's the best part about getting older? I guess I'm mellower. I guess I think it's having the time to reconnect with people in my life who have been significant. This is why I think might have told you before that I've been having these reunions at St. Rose, because that school closed after the earthquake, and those students that I taught back in the 50s are having their reunions, and now they're beginning to have them at our place, out in our garden, and being able to host those and help them organize it and help serve and get them all together doing the dishes, and that comes up quite often now. Mm-hmm. That being with those students from an earlier time and being just a part of them, So there's always something happening every day that seems to take my attention and that I have to be responsive for. Mm-hmm. Well, there was a day of prayer up at Santa Sabina that they asked me to give a couple of weeks ago. Prepare for that. Keep it simple. Don't have a lot of content. Give them a lot of space, a lot of time. So.
What's the hardest part about aging?
Probably memory, names. I never forget a face. I can recognize a face, across the Grand Canyon. Somebody that I taught, and I can visualize the face of everybody I taught, almost see where they sat. But when they have become older, and I look at them, I know who they are. I know the face. I can't think of the name. So names are what escape me, and I think that's normal for 90s.
I even have that problem.
Pardon? Do you have that problem? It's going to get only worse. And then just names of simple things, of simple household things. It's just like, so that to me, and then the fact that we begin to get disabilities. My body, when I wake up in the morning, is full of pain and aches, and I get till the motor gets running. But I don't pay a lot of attention to it unless I have to take a pill or something. I take I had Tylenol for aches and pains, and then the day starts rolling, and I'm okay.
Warmed up.
On the whole, you're very fit and lucid for somebody your age. What are your secrets?
What?
What are your secrets to staying fit?
I think just a healthy constitution. Mm-hmm. Born with a healthy.
You were born with it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And do you think that living the way you do in a community has anything to do with it?
Anything to do with what?
With how mentally sharp you've stayed over the years?
No, I think it would be pretty much wherever I would be.
Yeah, because I always think that people who get old and then don't do anything, they seem to decline faster than people who have a lot of stuff to do and
relationships.
But that would be the same thing if I weren't in the convent. I would have a lot to do and have relationships.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just your approach. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's who you are.
Yeah, I think it's just. I don't think I'd be any different, really. Mm-hmm. Just different set of circumstances, but yeah.
There's an essential you. You'd be you no matter where you are.
Well, I think we all are. Mm-hmm. So would you be. You come into life with certain predispositions, and they develop out of your life circumstances, and then you bring them wherever you are.
So how would you describe yourself?
I'm a Scorpio. I describe myself. I think I've been just blessed with a healthy family life, a healthy physical constitution, a fairly good mental ability to deal with whatever comes, and just someone who enjoys life, enjoys people, and looks for ways to keep connecting.
Mm-hmm.
What are 3 adjectives that your close friends, would use to describe you?
Stubborn. Confident. Generous. with my time and caring. But, mind of her own.
How did you and Harriet meet?
Oh, I had finished in this stuff where I had finished with the administration up to my ears, and then I took time off to go down to Tijuana and spent 6 months there, and then came back, and they said, now you have to get a real job again. You've had time off. So there were 2 or 3 things open, and one of them was to apply for the directorship at Santa Sabina Center, which was our conference center. The sister there was out of gas, and they were looking for a replacement. And so I said, okay, I think I'll try that. And so I applied, and several people applied, and the board accepted my proposal to run a retreat center in a contemplative way. Not as much doing lots of little workshops and stuff, but try to keep it very simple and contemplative. So I opened my opportunity there, and after a year, I realized that I needed somebody to work with to help support what I was doing. Harriet had come for a weekend retreat. She was on the road. Her 2 sons were grown now, and she was divorced. Her husband was now very, very ill, and she had been visiting him and having some time with him. They stayed close friends, even though they were separated. And then she was reading the book by Thomas Merton up in a retreat center in Napa, and someone told her, they're having a weekend over on Thomas Merton back in San Rafael, a place called Santa Sabina Center. And she looked at the book was Jim Finley, and Jim Finley was giving the retreat on Merton. So she came for a weekend retreat. And then the gal who was in charge of our programs said, if you want to stay on a little bit, I would love to have your help, because I'm initiating some new mailings, and because she was working on a dissertation. She got her doctorate in psychology, something to do with the new brand of psychology that they call, I forget what, but she brought a lot of skill. And so she then worked with Jackie on our programs, and then then she was going to take off somewhere else. And I said, well, stick around a little longer, maybe we can work together and create our own programs together instead of using other people's programs, So that's what happened, and she stayed I came in, I came in 82, and she came in 84, and we worked together into 2010, And then I got close to her kids, her 2 sons, wonderful men, I'm devoted to them, and then her grandchild, Ezra, who's like one of my grandchildren. And we just have stayed close friends ever since.
Yeah. You guys have a unique friendship. What do you think makes it special?
I just think we appreciate what each of us brings to the friendship. She appreciates my qualities, I appreciate hers. We're totally different. And yet together we work and make beautiful things happen. Yeah.
Love that. So another topic I wanted to talk about was death.
Death? Well, how do you want to approach death? We're good.
Do you have a feeling about what happens after you die?
I have no idea. I have no idea what happens. I think, you come into life, you live your life out, and at the end of that life, perhaps there's another step, perhaps there isn't. I don't know. And I really don't think about it much. I don't worry about it. I'm only concerned about how I live this life. And whatever there is in the next life I'll be very interested.
I imagine you've been around a fair amount of death in this community of aging people, and of course your own family members. How do you think about death and it kind of happens around you? How do you respond when someone close to you dies?
Well, it's like being there with Alice, holding her hand, and she died. It's like just a very precious person who will always be precious. And you've lost their immediacy of their life, but they've already formed in you a bond that will always be there. So you've given up their presence, and you've given up anything that you can hang on to as being here and now, but there's a depth to that I think must go on in some way. I do think it must go on, but I can't be sure. I can't be sure. We're given this life to live, and if there's anything hereafter, that's a bonus.
Yeah. Bonus round. So in our last 15 minutes, we have some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Some kind of quick, fun ones.
Sure.
And the first one is, what's the secret to perfect scrambled eggs?
Okay. I would say get very good eggs. Get happy hens,
Mm-hmm.
And for me, make sure they're whipped up really, really well. And I just use a fork to whip them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use one of those little whipping things. So I give them good until they're all totally coordinated. And then I pour in a little bit of milk and then cook them in butter and use a lot of butter. And make, even at the end, before you serve them, put a little bit of butter on the top. And that's perfect scrambled eggs.
That's a great tip.
Okay.
Can you share some books that have influenced you the most throughout your life?
Probably, gosh, that's so hard. Lots of Thomas Berry's books and lots of Thomas Merton's books probably would be and Frederick Frank as well. Maybe those three.
Is there one title in particular that?
Artist Away, with Frederick Frank, with Thomas Merton. Obviously, the Seven Starring Mountain, which Mother gave me when I entered. But there's several biographies of his letters, his own spiritual books, of which I read every single one of them. I just pick of anything from Thomas Merton or Thomas Berry. And for Thomas Berry, I would say the hang on a minute, the memory's going. It's the book that just broke through in the 80s and made such an impact. Thomas Berry's major book.
We can look it up after this.
Look it up.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I taught out of it. When I taught at the Dominican University, and the students just loved it too. And it might come before we leave.
All right.
What qualities do you think are underrated by our society?
Stability. Simplicity, unclutteredness, compassion. Maybe.
I agree with all of that.
Okay.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
My younger self? Looking back at my younger self? I don't have any advice because I've tried to respond in the moment, whatever that moment is, and whatever the life situation is, respond with the best that I have at that time, and try to be responsible and responsive. And I think I did best I could.
You have a lot of intergenerational relationships and friendships. What have you learned from the younger generation?
I just love being with people, and if they're younger, then that's a level of fun and openness to their lives that I enjoy. I just what I've learned simply is continue to be young in heart.
What's an unusual habit or an absurd thing that you love?
Unusual habit. Well, it used to be smoking. And even in the novitiate, this other gal and I would go up into the tomato patch in the evening and have a cigarette. But that's long past. Unusual habit. And what's the other word you said?
Or an absurd thing that you love?
Absurd thing I love. Funny papers. There's certain columns in the funny papers that I read every morning. And a couple of them, there's little family humor in some funny papers. A lot of people, when they grow out of the funny papers, but I have my favorites.
It's because you're young at heart.
When you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, what do you do to try to recover?
I just take quiet time and usually come to my room and sit down in my nice chair to kind of quiet down. Take a nap sometime. Well, I don't really sleep well during the day, but I'll lie down or I'll just take a walk. Sit out in the garden, go up and pick some roses. I usually recover pretty well. I don't long feel dragged out. If I do feel dragged out, it passes usually, during the day, and I re-energize because I get into something that energizes me. Usually it's some type of interaction, or just the quietness of putting everything aside and then letting the tide flow again, not get too cluttered.
Who's been your favorite president in your whole life?
Well, probably Kennedy. I enjoyed him a lot. You can go back all the way to Roosevelt. not that far. Although I do remember the guy who did the evening talks. Who was that? It was Roosevelt.
FDR.
The fireside chats. Yeah, I remember him as a child because my father would listen, to him. And my dad was, of course, Republican, but he had a lot of admiration for.
Republican meant a different thing back then.
Pardon me?
Republican meant a different thing.
Oh
back
gosh, did it mean a different thing? Don't get me started on the crummy people that we've got now under the label of Republican.
Well, the other question we're going to ask is, who do you think is going to win the 2020 election?
Well, I'm supporting Elizabeth Warren, and I would have every hope. Well, we have to get rid of this creep that we've got there of masquerading under the President of the United States and just leading us all down the hole of disaster.
Well said.
All that.
Yeah.
So I hope there'll be somebody who he won't be able to find a way to shoot down, and that the American people will recognize that we have somebody who could bring this country back to its stability and its promise as an international, part of the picture that human living on this planet today.
I'm just thinking of the underrated qualities you said earlier that I'd like to see our country value, like stability and compassion.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Simplicity.
And simplicity.
Yeah, I don't know. Would you think we can make it?
I hope so.
Yeah, we're resilient.
We're resilient.
Yeah.
But there's only so far you can go, Who are you supporting?
I'm also an Elizabeth Warren fan.
Same.
And Harry, too, and she likes that Pete guy.
Pete Buttigieg. Yeah. He, maybe she'll choose him as her VP.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
That'd be good. Can we work on that one?
Yeah. Well, Sudi, we're at the end of our questions, and the last thing that we'll ask is just how, for people listening to this who haven't met you or, future generations, is there anything you'd like to say to them?
Anything I'd like to say to people in future generations, live your life. Live it. Live it. Don't just watch it go by. Live it. Enter into it as fully as you can. Heart and soul and mind.
Enter into it. I like
Body.
that phrase.
Enter into it, yeah. Don't watch it go by. Enter into it.
Well, thanks, Sudie.
Thank you for your time, Sudie.
Well, thank you. It was fun.